In 1982, at the height of their global fame, ABBA suddenly stopped releasing new music. There was no official farewell, no dramatic breakup announcement, and no final world tour. One of the most successful pop groups in history, with over 150 million records sold, simply vanished from the spotlight. The question has persisted for decades. Why did ABBA walk away when they were on top? The answer lies in a combination of personal exhaustion, deteriorating relationships, and a changing musical landscape. Behind the group's perfectly produced hits and polished public image, the reality was more complex. ABBA was not just a band. It was two married couples, Bjorn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog, Benny Andersson and Annie Frid Lyngstad, whose personal lives were intertwined with their professional success. By the early 1980s, both couples had divorced. Bjorn and Agnetha separated in 1979. Benny and Annie Frid divorced in 1981. Though the group continued to perform and record after the breakups, the strain was increasingly visible. Studio sessions grew tense. Public appearances became less frequent. The interpersonal chemistry that had once fueled their music was now fractured. Their last album, The Visitors, released in 1981, reflected this shift. It was darker, more introspective, and more subdued than their earlier work. Songs like When All Is Said and Done and One of Us hinted at emotional isolation and personal disillusionment. The change in tone was not accidental. It mirrored what was happening off stage. At the same time, the global music scene was evolving. The early 1980s saw the rise of new wave, synth-pop, and MTV-driven visual acts. ABBA's sound, once revolutionary, began to feel out of sync with emerging trends. Though still commercially viable, the group sensed a shift in public taste. Rather than risk fading relevance or a decline in quality, they made a decision few artists would. They stepped back. By the end of 1982, they had completed what would be their final recording session for nearly 4 decades. The single Under Attack was released with little fanfare. There was no new album. No announcement followed. The silence was intentional. Each member pursued individual paths. Bjorn and Benny focused on musical theater, creating the hit musical Chess. Annie Frid and Agnetha released solo albums, but avoided touring extensively. For years, fans speculated about a reunion. Offers for comebacks, tours, and massive paychecks were consistently declined. The members maintained that they had no plans to reform. Their legacy remained intact, preserved in time by the fact that they never overstayed their welcome. Only in 2018 did the group confirm they had recorded new material. In 2021, they released Voyage, their first studio album in 40 years. It was a carefully controlled return, supported by a digital concert experience using avatars. But the original decision to walk away in 1982 remained one of the most deliberate and clean exits in pop music history. ABBA's disappearance was not caused by scandal, failure, or creative burnout. It was a conscious choice made at the peak of their powers, driven by personal dynamics, emotional fatigue, and a recognition that their moment had passed. Few artists manage such an exit. Fewer still preserve their mystique across decades of absence. ABBA did both.